Our ancestors valued trees for what they really are. Do you? Welcome to Iowa's Initiations. If you want to honor the land, connect with your ancestors, witness the gods, all while saving Midgard, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Hey there, you beautiful heathen! Welcome to Iowa's Initiations. I'm your host, Matt Sargent. Today we're going to be talking about why trees are sacred, how we know that our ancestors revered them, and why you should be incorporating trees into your life and go beyond being a tree hugging hippie and be a tree planting heathen. The first biggie that shows to us that our ancestors at least valued trees is that the whole cosmology of the northern pantheon is based on the world tree, Yggdrasil. Was it an ash or was it a yew? Scholars debate about this. Doesn't really matter. But we know that all life in the northern cosmos, in the multiverse, so to speak, all 9 realms depend on a tree to survive. And just like those of us here on Midgard depend on trees in a myriad of ways for our survival, even if we don't know it, or even if we don't fully recognize how important trees really are, Yggdrasil serves and shelters and protects the 9 realms in the same way. We can also see an importance of trees when we look at the Futharks. In the Elder Futhark, there's only 2 trees recommended. We've got Iowa's, the name of this channel, for the yew tree, and Berkano for the birch tree. And you're going to have to forgive me because I'm not as familiar with the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. I'm learning it. I'm not great at Anglo-Saxon, so I'm probably going to butcher the names. But if we look at the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, there are 2 more trees identified in addition to the yew and the birch. And we've got Ak for oak, I'm sure I'm butchering these names, and Esk for ash. So when we look at the symbology of the Futharks, we see a lot of elements that are very important to either living a good life or sustaining life. And depending on whether you're looking at the Elder or the Anglo-Saxon, we do see trees represented as being an important part of what sustains life and the mysteries of life. But we still see that trees were important to the northern people and their value was recognized. The last and most important part of the conversation about the importance of trees and a very often overlooked principle is found in the tale of Idun and her apples. And for those of you who don't know, I'm assuming you do, but just in case you don't, Idun is a goddess who manages a garden. And it's a beautiful, vibrant garden. Everything is green and lush and growing, and flowers that smell beyond anything you've ever smelled. And in that garden is an apple tree. And the apples that this tree produces are magic apples that, when given to the gods, keep them young and strong and healthy and reverse the process of aging. And it's very interesting that out of all the food that could magically sustain the gods forever is that it's an apple. Well, I believe this is the case because apples are a perennial crop, and at least to us mere mortals, trees live forever. I've eaten apples off of 200-year-old trees. I know there are trees out there that are much older than that that still produce food. So imagine, if you will, you went and planted an apple tree today. It could be feeding your family multiple generations from now, assuming that it was tended to. And trees, as far as a food source, offer a lot of benefits to humans as well as the local ecosystem. Since they're a perennial crop, they don't require any soil destruction or damage, tilling, kind of plant it once and then maintain it. So it's less work in the long run for the person who is tending the garden. But if you were to look at the book Restoration Agriculture by Mark Shepard, he does a great breakdown of the nutrient value in an acre of chestnuts versus an acre of wheat, and then also looks at the ecological impacts of both. And we find that tree crops, especially when planted in polycultures, and you have a mixture of tree crops such as chestnuts and oaks and hickory and apples and pears and all the other fruits and nuts that grow on trees, that you can meet the nutritional demands of humans far easier and with greater variety with perennial crops than you can with the average annual, where there's only, like 6 cereal grains that seem to feed the world. Um, so, but the other benefits of trees is that they provide all sorts of climate controls. First, as I mentioned, trees protect the soil, and they do this in numerous ways. One, their root system feed different sorts of fungal mycelium that benefit other plants around them. They basically put liquid carbon that they absorb from the air into the ground that feeds the fungi. But the other benefits of trees as far as protecting the soil is, since they're a perennial crop, there's no tillage, so there's less erosion from wind and rain, less soil washing downstream, clogging the Gulf, etc., etc. Other soil protecting benefits of trees is the canopy of trees. When it rains heavily, it slows down the rainfall, and the impact of the rain on the soil is decreased because it's not going as fast, so you're getting less compaction. If you've ever tilled a garden and then had it rain really hard and then it dries up, by the time you can go work the garden again, you'll find even if you have good, healthy, well, you probably don't have the healthiest of soil if you're tilling, but the rain event itself can cause severe compaction on the soil. Compacted soil doesn't have oxygen, doesn't have pore spaces to hold water, doesn't have places to hold nutrients, things run out. So with this perennial cover of trees, you're providing a lot of benefits to the soil, which in turn benefits the other crops that you can grow under trees, such as shrubs, vines, etc. If you want to break down in the different layers of a food forest, check out Cultivating the 9 Noble Virtues. It's linked up here. I give a breakdown of the layers of the eco garden. But trees do a lot to benefit the soil. Other climatic controls of trees is they help decrease evaporative loss of water by creating wind buffers and windbreaks, slowing down wind. So after a rain or a morning dew or whatnot, that moisture goes into the ground to nourish the plants, the trees themselves, as well as other plants around them. And it's actually been proven by the USDA. If you look up the agroforestry practices of silvopasture or row cropping, that having trees interplanted with either pasture or crops benefits the production of forage or crops due to the climatic controls of the trees. They keep it cooler during the summer and warmer during the winter, so you get a longer growing season, whether it's for your pasture or for your other crops. And this is partly due to the cooling effect that trees have, especially in the summer. A lot of people assume that this is just because of the shade. It's actually in conjunction with the shade, but it also has to do with the evapotranspiration of the trees. Trees kind of sweat. They let out moisture, and then that moisture is released in a cool area. And just like sweating cools us down, when the trees sweat, it cools the air down. And that's why taking a walk in the woods on a hot summer's day feels a lot cooler than just going and standing in a parking garage. The parking garage might be shaded, but you don't have that water effect that helps with the cooling. So the evaporative cooling of the trees keeps things cooler, benefits livestock or other crops in the system. It's also been shown that having areas of trees, due to this evaporative transpiration, helps produce rain. And rain in general is a good thing, especially if you have good, healthy soil that can absorb that rain and prevent it from all washing downstream and causing flooding events. So if more people had eco gardens or agroforestry inspired farms with more trees promoting healthier soil, we'd see fewer of these flooding events that are becoming so rampant, especially now that most farmers are using drainage tile to drain off excess water because too much water is bad for your corn or wheat. Well, too much rain is very rarely an issue for a forest, and that's why the eco garden, the food forest, is an important thing to plan and plant. Not only does it provide food, fiber, fuel, and medicine for yourself, but it provides all these ecological benefits to you and your neighbors. And that includes your wild neighbors, the birds, the bees, the squirrels, etc.